Chosen one, there are moments in life when the shifts around you make no sense at first. People who once seemed inseparable begin to drift away, conversations become strangely forced, and connections that appeared unbreakable suddenly lose their strength. You may have questioned whether you did something wrong, but what if these changes are not punishment? What if they are divine protection unfolding before your eyes? Sometimes heaven works quietly, removing distractions before revealing purpose. The separation may feel painful, yet every ending carries the seed of a greater beginning. If you have been noticing unusual changes in your relationships, this message may explain what your spirit has already begun to recognize. Chosen one of the first signs God is removing a person from your circle is the growing sense of discomfort you feel whenever they are around. This is not ordinary irritation or a temporary disagreement. It is a spiritual signal that your inner discernment is becoming stronger than your emotional attachment. Once you could ignore certain behaviors because your heart wanted peace more than truth. Now your spirit refuses to stay silent. Every conversation seems to leave you drained instead of inspired. Every interaction creates confusion instead of clarity. What once felt familiar now feels strangely heavy, and you cannot explain why. That is because your soul recognizes what your mind is only beginning to understand. God often speaks before circumstances change. Long before people physically leave your life, your spirit begins noticing the shift. You start recognizing patterns you overlooked for years. Words that once sounded supportive now carry hidden criticism. Smiles that once felt warm now seem forced. You begin realizing that not everyone who applauded your presence was celebrating your purpose. Some people were comfortable only with the version of you that stayed small. The moment you started growing spiritually, emotionally, and mentally, something inside the relationship changed. The person may not openly oppose you. In fact, they may continue acting friendly while quietly resisting your progress. This is why the separation feels confusing. There is no dramatic argument. There is no obvious betrayal. Instead, there is a slow fading of peace whenever they enter your space. God does not always expose people through explosive conflict. Sometimes he reveals them by removing the comfort you once associated with them. Pay attention to how your energy changes after every encounter. Before meeting them, you may feel hopeful, motivated, and focused. After spending time with them, your mind becomes clouded. Doubt replaces confidence. Fear replaces excitement. You start questioning decisions that previously felt clear. This is not coincidence. The people closest to you either strengthen your vision or weaken it. They either remind you who God called you to become or tempt you to settle for who you used to be. Chosen one, another sign appears when opportunities begin separating your paths naturally. Plans that once worked out effortlessly suddenly fall apart. Invitations stop coming. Schedules no longer align. Circumstances that once kept you together begin shifting in unexpected ways. At first this may seem unfortunate, but heaven often creates distance before it creates understanding. God knows that if he explained everything immediately, your emotions might convince you to hold on to relationships he has already released. Many people mistake divine distance for bad luck. They keep forcing doors open that God has quietly closed. They continue chasing conversations that heaven has already ended. They exhaust themselves trying to restore connections that no longer carry life. What they fail to realize is that not every separation is an attack. Some separations are answers to prayers they have forgotten they prayed. You asked God for peace, but peace required distance. You asked God for wisdom, but wisdom required revelation. You asked God for growth, but growth required pruning. The painful part is that pruning rarely feels like promotion while it is happening. It feels like loss. It feels like confusion. It feels like silence. Yet every gardener understands that healthy growth demands removing what no longer belongs. The branch does not understand why it is being cut until the next season reveals greater fruit. The person may have played an important role during one chapter of your life. That does not mean they are assigned to every chapter. Some people are companions for a season, not guardians of your destiny. The mistake many chosen ones make is believing loyalty means permanent access. But God values obedience above unhealthy attachment. When heaven says it is time to move, remaining out of guilt becomes disobedience disguised as kindness. Notice how your prayers begin changing. Instead of asking God to fix the relationship, you begin asking him to reveal the truth. That shift is significant. Your spirit stops chasing comfort and starts pursuing clarity. Deep within, you already sense that something has changed. You simply want confirmation that what you are feeling is not your imagination. God often answers by increasing your discernment rather than providing immediate explanations. Suddenly you hear what you once ignored. You recognize manipulation hidden inside compliments. You detect jealousy hiding behind humor. You notice how every achievement you share is somehow redirected back toward them. Every victory becomes an opportunity for comparison instead of celebration. A true supporter rejoices when you rise. A hidden competitor grows uncomfortable when you succeed. The difference becomes impossible to ignore once God removes the veil from your eyes. Chosen one, Another unmistakable sign is that conversations begin circling around negativity. Every meeting becomes filled with gossip, fear, complaints, or criticism. Whenever you try discussing vision, purpose, gratitude, or faith, the atmosphere changes. They redirect the discussion toward problems instead of possibilities. Over time, you realize that your spirit leaves every interaction carrying burdens that never belong to you. Energy is contagious. Faith is contagious. Fear is also contagious. God knows that prolonged exposure shapes perspective. If you continually surround yourself with voices that expect failure, eventually even your strongest faith begins fighting unnecessary battles. This is why divine separation is often an act of protection rather than rejection. The J person may not intentionally desire your downfall. Sometimes people simply refuse to evolve beyond the version of life they have accepted. When you begin pursuing greater purpose, your progress becomes an uncomfortable reminder of the dreams they abandoned. Rather than confronting their own limitations, they unconsciously resist your transformation because your growth exposes their stagnation. Not everyone can accompany you into your next season because your next season demands a different atmosphere. Seeds require the right soil. Eagles require open skies. Purpose requires healthy environments. God understands this better than anyone. That is why He sometimes changes your surroundings before changing your circumstances. You may notice something else happening. The closer you grow to God, the more uncomfortable the J person becomes around you. Your peace unsettles them. Your discipline irritates them. Your boundaries confuse them. The qualities that once inspired admiration now seem to provoke subtle resistance. Without realizing it, they begin testing your patience, questioning your decisions, or minimizing your convictions. This is not because you have become difficult. It is because your standards have changed. The people who benefited from your lack of boundaries often struggle when those boundaries become firm. Those who expected unlimited access suddenly call you distant. Those who depended on your constant availability accuse you of changing. They are correct. You are changing. Growth always changes people. The tragedy is not that you changed. The tragedy would be remaining the same after everything God has taught you. Chosen one, pay close attention to repeated delays involving this person. Every attempt to reconnect encounters unexpected obstacles. Messages remain unanswered. Meetings get canceled. Travel plans fall apart. Timing never seems right anymore. Instead of forcing these moments, ask yourself whether heaven is gently redirecting your path. God rarely competes with human stubbornness. He simply keeps closing the same door until His children finally stop knocking. Many chosen ones waste years trying to revive relationships that heaven quietly buried long ago. They mistake persistence for faith when, in reality, faith sometimes means walking away without demanding explanations. Not every unanswered question is meant to become an investigation. Some mysteries exist because God is protecting you from information that would only deepen unnecessary ones. Another sign appears when your confidence begins returning during periods of distance. While separated from the J person, your creativity increases, your focus sharpens, your peace becomes consistent. Ideas flow naturally, decisions become easier, you laugh more, you sleep better, your relationship with God feels stronger. Then after reconnecting, the confusion quietly returns. Patterns reveal what isolated events often hide. Do not evaluate relationships by occasional good moments. Evaluate them by consistent spiritual fruit. Does the connection strengthen your calling? Does it deepen your peace? Does it encourage your obedience? Or does it repeatedly distract you from becoming who God created you to be? These questions require honesty, not emotion, not nostalgia, not guilt. Honesty, because destiny cannot afford prolonged deception. Chosen one, there is another reason God removes certain people before your next breakthrough. Some individuals know too much about your past to comfortably embrace your future. They have memorized your old identity so completely that they unconsciously resist your transformation. Every time you demonstrate maturity, they remind you of former mistakes. Every time you embrace discipline, they reference the careless person you used to be. They are not necessarily malicious. They simply cannot separate your history from your destiny. But God never introduces you to your future by keeping you imprisoned inside your past. He calls Abraham out, He calls Moses out, He calls disciples out. Movement has always been part of divine assignment. Remaining where growth has ended eventually becomes spiritual resistance. You may feel torn because the J person has shared meaningful memories with you. Those memories are real. The laughter happened. The support existed. The bond mattered. Yet honoring the value of yesterday does not require sacrificing tomorrow. Gratitude for someone's role in your past should never become permission for them to interrupt your future. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is allowing people to remain part of your testimony instead of forcing them to remain part of your journey. God knows exactly who belongs beside you in every season. He knows who can celebrate your elevation without envy. He knows who can handle your transformation without resentment. He knows who will speak life when everyone else speaks doubt. And He also knows who must quietly fade away before your next assignment can fully unfold. Chosen one, when God begins removing a J person from your circle, another powerful sign, is that your dependence on their approval starts disappearing. There was a time when their opinion carried tremendous weight. Before making important decisions, you wanted to know what they thought. Before stepping into new opportunities, you searched their face for encouragement. If they approved, you felt confident. If they hesitated, you questioned yourself. But something has changed. You are no longer driven by the need to gain their validation, because God is teaching you to value His voice above every human opinion. This transition is uncomfortable because people become accustomed to influencing your choices. They expect their words to shape your direction. When that influence begins fading, they often interpret your spiritual maturity as pride. They may accuse you of becoming distant, stubborn, or difficult. What they fail to recognize is that your confidence is no longer rooted in pleasing people. It is rooted in trusting God. That is a necessary lesson for every chosen one. If every decision requires human permission, then your calling remains vulnerable to human emotions. God never intended your destiny to depend upon someone's changing moods. He intended you to hear His voice clearly enough that even when others misunderstand your path, you continue walking faithfully. The J person may become increasingly frustrated because your responses are different now. Arguments that once pulled you into emotional battles no longer receive the same reaction. Provocations lose their power. You refuse to defend yourself unnecessarily. Silence becomes your strength rather than your weakness. This is spiritual growth. Not every accusation deserves an answer. Not every misunderstanding requires correction. Sometimes peace is maintained by refusing to participate in battles that heaven never assigned to you. Notice how God begins changing your priorities during this season. Activities that once consumed your attention lose their appeal. Endless conversations become exhausting. Meaningless entertainment feels empty. Instead, your heart longs for quiet moments with God. You crave wisdom instead of noise. You seek purpose instead of distraction. This change often creates distance between you and people who built the relationship around constant activity rather than spiritual substance. When conversations become shallow, your soul notices. When relationships become repetitive, your spirit recognizes it. When growth stops, discernment begins asking difficult questions. The J person may not understand why you no longer enjoy the same routines. They may believe someone has influenced you against them. In reality, the greatest influence has been your growing relationship with God. The closer you draw to divine truth, the harder it becomes to comfortably remain in environments that continuously pull you away from it. That is why separation frequently happens without dramatic conflict. The atmosphere simply changes. The conversations change, the priorities change. The connection slowly loses the spiritual harmony it once possessed. Chosen one. Another revealing sign is that secrets begin surfacing without anyone intentionally exposing them. Hidden motives become visible through repeated actions. Promises remain unfulfilled. Inconsistencies multiply. You begin seeing patterns instead of isolated incidents. One disappointment can be forgiven. Two disappointments may be understandable. But when the same behavior repeats over and over, wisdom asks you to stop making excuses. God often reveals truth through repetition. He allows certain situations to occur multiple times until denial can no longer survive. You remember moments that once seemed insignificant. The sarcastic remarks, the subtle comparisons, the unexpected jealousy, the lack of enthusiasm whenever you shared good news. At the time, you dismissed these moments because you wanted to believe the best. There is nothing wrong with believing the best, but there is danger in ignoring what God repeatedly places before your eyes. Discernment does not destroy love. Discernment protects love from becoming blind. Another sign appears when your prayers begin receiving answers that make separation unavoidable. New opportunities arise in different places. Different schedules develop. Different responsibilities occupy your time. At first, you wonder why life feels so busy. Then you realize God is not merely filling your calendar. He is repositioning your life. He is creating healthy distance through divine assignments. The blessing itself becomes the separation. Your new responsibilities naturally reduce unnecessary access. Your new focus limits unnecessary conversations. Your new season demands greater discipline. What once fit easily into your routine no longer has room to remain. This is why many people misunderstand promotion. Promotion is not merely receiving more. Promotion also requires releasing more. Every higher level demands lighter baggage. Imagine a mountain climber carrying unnecessary weight. The higher the climb, the more impossible that burden becomes. Likewise, spiritual elevation requires releasing relationships, habits, and mindsets that cannot survive the altitude of your calling. Chosen one. Perhaps one of the clearest signs is that you stop fearing loneliness. That may surprise you. Many people remain connected to unhealthy relationships because they fear being alone. God understands this fear. Instead of immediately replacing every relationship, He first teaches you that His presence is enough. During this season, you discover something remarkable. Peace is not loneliness. Silence is not abandonment. Solitude is not rejection. There are moments when heaven intentionally reduces the voices around you, so you can finally hear the one voice that has been patiently waiting for your attention. You begin enjoying mornings without constant notifications. You no longer panic when your phone remains quiet. You stop measuring your worth by how many people contact you. Your identity becomes anchored in God rather than in social acceptance. That transformation is priceless, because once your security comes from God, manipulation loses its power. People can no longer control you by threatening to leave. They can no longer influence your decisions by withholding approval. Freedom begins where unhealthy dependence ends. The J person may notice this freedom before you fully understand it yourself. They recognize that the old methods no longer work. The guilt no longer controls you. The pressure no longer influences you. The emotional games no longer produce the same results. When unhealthy patterns stop producing desired outcomes, they often intensify for a season. Do not be surprised if criticism increases. Do not be surprised if misunderstandings multiply. Do not be surprised if you suddenly become the villain in stories you never helped write. This has happened throughout history. When people lose influence, they sometimes attempt to preserve control through false narratives. Remain calm. Truth does not panic. Character does not need constant advertisement. Time has a remarkable way of revealing what emotions attempt to conceal. Chosen one, another unmistakable sign is that your discernment begins extending beyond one relationship. As God opens your eyes regarding the J person, He also sharpens your ability to recognize healthy and unhealthy influences everywhere else. You become slower to trust empty words. You become quicker to recognize genuine integrity. You stop being impressed by appearances alone. You start evaluating fruit instead of promises. This wisdom becomes one of the greatest gifts God gives His chosen people. Anyone can make promises. Anyone can speak confidently. Anyone can create impressive first impressions. But consistent character cannot be manufactured forever. Eventually, actions speak louder than carefully chosen words. God teaches His children to observe patiently, not suspiciously, patiently. There is a difference. Suspicion assumes the worst without evidence. Discernment waits quietly until truth reveals itself. The J person may continue insisting that nothing has changed, yet your spirit knows otherwise. You no longer ignore the check in your heart. You no longer dismiss the quiet warning that repeatedly returns after every interaction. The Holy Spirit often whispers long before circumstances begin shouting. Wise people listen to whispers. Otherwise, life eventually teaches through storms. Chosen one, consider how often God removed people before releasing greater blessings. He separated Joseph from familiar surroundings before elevating him. He isolated David in the wilderness before placing a crown upon his head. He led Elijah into seasons of solitude before public demonstrations of power. These moments were not accidents. Preparation frequently looks like isolation. Protection frequently feels like separation. Transformation frequently begins with uncomfortable endings. You may wonder why God does not simply change the J person instead of removing them. Sometimes He does, but sometimes each person has a different assignment. Not everyone is meant to walk every mile of your journey. God honors free will. He allows people to choose their own path. Your responsibility is not forcing transformation upon others. Your responsibility is remaining faithful to your own calling. That realization removes enormous pressure from your shoulders. You are not responsible for fixing everyone. You are not responsible for rescuing everyone. You are not responsible for convincing everyone to understand you. Your assignment is obedience. God handles the outcomes. Another sign emerges when unexpected peace follows difficult decisions. Walking away may break your heart, but strangely, your spirit feels lighter. You cry, yet you sleep peacefully. You grieve, yet hope remains alive. This combination confuses many people because they assume every painful decision must produce regret. Not when God is leading. Sometimes obedience hurts emotionally while simultaneously bringing spiritual relief. That peace cannot be manufactured. It cannot be explained logically. It simply confirms that heaven is guiding your steps. Chosen one, be careful not to mistake compassion for permission. You can pray for someone without remaining connected to destructive patterns. You can forgive someone without restoring unrestricted access. You can wish them well while continuing forward. Forgiveness removes bitterness. Wisdom establishes boundaries. Both are necessary. Many believers practice one while neglecting the other. They forgive but abandon wisdom, or they establish boundaries without forgiving. God calls you to embrace both. A heart free from resentment, a mind guided by discernment, a life directed by purpose. This balance protects your future. The J person may never fully understand why distance became necessary. That is not your burden to carry. Not every decision will receive applause. Not every act of obedience will be celebrated. Some seasons require you to be misunderstood by people in order to remain aligned with God. That is a price many are unwilling to pay. Chosen ones eventually learn that temporary misunderstanding is far less costly than permanent disobedience. There is another quiet sign that often goes unnoticed. You stop trying to convince yourself everything is fine. For months or even years, you created explanations. They're just having a bad day. They didn't mean it. I'm probably overthinking. They'll change eventually. While compassion is beautiful, constant self-deception is dangerous. Eventually, God brings you to a place where honesty becomes impossible to avoid. You acknowledge reality without hatred. You accept truth without revenge. You release people without bitterness. That is spiritual maturity. Immature people leave with anger. Mature people leave with peace. Immature people seek revenge. Mature people seek freedom. Immature people spend years proving someone wrong. Mature people spend those same years fulfilling God's purpose. Your time is too valuable to waste chasing closure from people who were never assigned to provide it. God becomes your closure. His peace becomes your confirmation. His direction becomes your confidence. And as your journey continues, you will begin noticing that every relationship He preserves carries a different quality. There is mutual respect instead of constant competition. There is encouragement instead of subtle discouragement. There is honesty without manipulation. There is correction without humiliation. There is love that does not demand you shrink in order to make someone else comfortable. Those are the relationships that nourish your calling instead of draining it, and they become increasingly precious because you finally understand the difference between people who merely enjoy your company and people who genuinely honor the purpose God placed upon your life. Chosen one, as you continue walking this path, remember that every divine removal creates room for a divine appointment. Nature itself teaches this principle. Before new growth appears, old leaves fall away. Before a new season flourishes, the previous one comes to an end. God works with the same wisdom in your life. He never removes something meaningful without already seeing what is waiting beyond your current horizon. Your perspective is limited to today, but His vision stretches across every tomorrow you have yet to experience. The person may never understand why the distance became necessary. They may create their own explanations. They may believe you changed for the worse when, in reality, you changed because God refused to leave you where you were. Resist the temptation to defend every decision. Your life will eventually explain what your words never could. The fruit of your obedience will speak louder than any argument you could have made. Continue choosing peace over proving points. Continue choosing wisdom over unnecessary conflict. Continue choosing purpose over popularity. Continue choosing God's direction over human approval. Those choices may seem costly in the moment, but they always produce lasting rewards. Never forget that God sees conversations you never hear. He sees intentions you never recognize. He sees motives hidden behind smiles. He sees dangers disguised as opportunities. What feels confusing to you is completely clear to Him. That is why trust is so important. You are following a God who never asked you to walk blindly. He asked you to walk faithfully. Even when you cannot see the entire path, He has already gone before you. Every closed door, every delayed meeting, every unexpected cancellation, and every relationship that quietly fades away is still under His authority. One day you will look back and realize that the separation you feared became the protection you desperately needed. You will understand why certain conversations had to end, why certain invitations stopped coming, why certain people slowly disappeared from your daily life, why your heart could no longer settle where it once felt comfortable. It was never because God wanted to leave you empty. It was because He refused to let you carry unnecessary weight into the future He had prepared for you. So if you recognize these signs, do not respond with fear. Respond with faith. Do not cling to what God is gently asking you to release. Do not mistake familiarity for destiny. Do not confuse history with assignment. Walk forward knowing that the same God who removes also restores, the same God who closes doors also opens better ones, and the same God who separates you from unhealthy connections also surrounds you with people who will strengthen your faith, sharpen your purpose, and celebrate the calling He has placed upon your life. Chosen one, your circle is changing because your calling is expanding. Your discernment is growing because your responsibilities are increasing. Your peace is becoming more valuable because God is preparing you for places where distraction cannot be allowed. Trust the process even when it feels uncomfortable. Trust His timing even when it seems slow. Trust His wisdom even when your emotions struggle to understand it. The people meant for your future will never require you to compromise your relationship with God in order to keep them. They will honor your growth instead of resisting it. They will encourage your obedience instead of distracting you from it. They will recognize the hand of God upon your life and rejoice, not compete. That is the kind of circle heaven desires for every chosen one. A circle built on truth, faith, humility, and purpose. And when that circle is complete, you will realize that every person God removed made room for someone He had already chosen to help you fulfill the destiny He wrote over your life long before you ever took your first breath. Second.